Fantasy Football Factory Week 15. We got the King of the South, Mintzy. We got Moody on the sticks. I am Stephen Cheah. We are, as always, brought to you by DraftKings. Our partners at DraftKings have a brand new way to play daily fantasy with the Pick 6 app. All new customers who play just $5 are going to get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now with code Fantasy. It's super easy. Just pick at least 2 players. Choose if they'll have more or less than a certain set. More or less than 51.5 receiving yards. More or less than 1.5 passing touchdowns. More or less than 2.5 receptions. Lock them in and compete against others for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download DraftKings Pick 6 app now with code Fantasy. Only the DraftKings Pick 6 app. The crown is yours. Mintzy, your squad, we are out of the fantasy for season-long people. We're out of the regular season, so the cream of the crop has risen. Congrats if you are in the fantasy playoffs. But Mintzy, we got to talk about a couple things first. Obviously, close to home, the Saints are undergoing a quarterback change due to injury. Derek Carr, broken hand. It looks like they'll probably go with Jay Kane or maybe Spencer Rattler, who was fairly unimpressive when he played. But what do you think this does to an already very depleted Saints roster that is without Chris Olave, Taysom Hill? Does this do anything for Kamara's value? Is he playable anymore? He had a horrible game against the Saints.
I still think he's playable just because, especially if you're in PPR, because he catches so many dump-offs. Yep. But that he's the only one that's playable at this point. That's it. And, I mean, I think he's probably a number 2 RB, not a number 1 now.
Okay.
But I think the Derek Carr thing's kind of tragic. I mean, I know a lot of people piled on him and it hadn't really worked out in New Orleans, but you got to respect he's in his mid-30s. He broke his hand laying out to get a first down for a 4-9 team or 4-8 team in a meaningless game in the fourth in New York. I mean, it's kind of sad, dude. The dude cares. I mean, dude, he didn't have to lay out on that play. He could have easily made a business decision. Yeah. And he sold out, and then, that may be the last play he ever makes as a New Orleans Saint. He's out for the year. They can get out of his contract after this year. Obviously, the whole thing's a mess, but I don't know. People were, pawing on him, and I felt bad for him, legitimately.
Yeah, it is a mess down in the Bayou. Let's talk about – so this game is going to be Thursday night. We got Rams 49ers. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey has been hurt. That's has been a headline of fantasy football in general for the entire season. Jordan Mason on IR too. Isaac Arendo, very good game. He earns a Gruden grinder for his performance this weekend. He goes down. He's questionable to play on Thursday. Obviously, we don't really talk Thursday games too much. But as far as the Niners running back situation, what are you doing if you have any of these guys in your roster?
Well, I feel like there's a chance with the short week makes it not great for Garendo to get back. I mean, it just seems like a spot. But they are in a must-win at 6-7. When you're in a division, Seattle 8-5, Rams 7-6, both them in Arizona 6-7. I mean, it's a total must-win for the Niners because they've lost head-to-head to all 3 teams already. Mm-hmm. But, man, I feel like it's a spot. I mean, what can you do? It's just their snake bit this year. I mean, It is what it is. Trent Williams still out. Bosa's still out. Ayuk out for the year. It's just been one thing after another.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you think you can go even any deeper for them?
Yeah, I mean, if they got running backs that are playing, certainly in that system, it is a valuable tool. That being said, we are on, you can only take up so many roster spots for 49ers running backs, and we are getting towards the end of that. But Brock Purdy turned in a good fantasy game. He is, a fantasy relevant guy for sure. Deebo Samuel's been slumping, but
Deebo looks like he's slowed down a little bit. Sometimes I know that, it's like the eye test thing's a thing, but you can see it. He always used to pop off the screen. He doesn't look like he's moving as fast.
Yeah.
And while we're commenting on Rams Niners, before we move on, we got to mention, dude, that Bills-Rams game. Holy freaking crap. Josh Allen, first player in NFL history to run for 3 and throw for 3 in the same game, and then they lost 44-42, and Puka 12 for 165 and a touchdown and a rushing touchdown. Just, what the heck? That game was one of the craziest NFL games. I guess it kind of reminded me of that 54-51 Rams-Chiefs Monday night game years ago. But, you just don't see NFL games fly off the rails like that.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on that one because it wasn't like a, back and forth. It was more like, the Rams were up 21, Buffalo cut into it. They made it kind of interesting at the end. We're doing the onside kick thing and all that stuff. So certainly it was, fruit-worthy, for fruit-bearing for stats and fantasy and all that, which we do talk about. But as far as like the excitement of the actual game, like I never really felt that game was out of the Rams' hands after they took such a commanding lead. But hell of a performance from Josh Allen. He probably, I would think, that's gonna be his MVP performance.
He's minus 400 on DraftKings doing MVP right now. Saquon Barkley second at plus 450. So Josh Allen commanding lead for NFL MVP off that game.
Thank God Saquon's not gonna win it. Good Lord. All right, let's talk about this week's slate. So we got 2 Monday night games, which is kind of freaky at this point in the season.
Do you like it?
Not really, but I mean, it'll be interesting because the Bears have put up some absolute stinkers, so they could be worthy of having the channel changed on them. All right, let's go over it. We're not going to talk about Rams-Niners. That's a 49.5 game, 2.5 point spread for the Niners. That's on Thursday night. And the classic spread, just the, not Sunday night, not Monday night, not Thursday, but the classic DFS window we got. Dallas at Carolina. Carolina favored by 2.5, 43.5 total points.
We got to mention it. First time Carolina's been favored in an NFL game in like 40-something games. It's been almost 3 seasons since they've been a favorite.
They deserve it. They're playing really good.
Dude, they are. And dude, the guy who bet the $3 million money line when Xavier Legette looked like you had to see the replay that he trapped it on the diving catch.
Yeah.
If he'd have caught that ball.
Yeah. All right, we got Kansas City at Cleveland. KC 4.5 point favorites. 44.5 total.
I just can't the KC thing, dude.
Yeah, you can't.
Just every week, dude. They just
games. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen a team do it better. They just enough.
Yeah, we got Miami going to Houston. The Texans 3-point favorites, 46.5. Cincinnati on the road against Tennessee, 46.5 point total there. Washington visiting New Orleans. Washington 7.5 point favorites, 43.5 point total there. Jets going to Jacksonville. I'm just going to say that game's completely unwatchable. 40.5 point total. The Jets are favored by 3.5. Yuck, what an awful game that is.
I will say the Jets, I watched a lot of Garrett Wilson and Adams looked the best they have all year last week.
Yeah. Rodgers, I believe he was over 300 yards.
Yeah, they were toasting the Miami DBs.
Yeah. We got Baltimore going to the Meadowlands to face the Giants at MetLife. The Ravens 14.5 point road favorites. And this one 43.5 point total. We got Pittsburgh, Philly. It looks like George Pickens may miss the game. Eagles 5 point favorites, 42.5 point total. We got the Colts going to Denver, which I think could get interesting. Mm-hmm. Denver 4 point favorites, 44.5 point total. Then we got the marquee game of the week. We got Buffalo going to Detroit. Lions 2.5 point favorites, 53.5 point total. We got the Bucks going to the Chargers. The Chargers are 3 point favorites there, 45.5 is the point total. We got the formerly Chandler Jones Bowl. Now I know he's out with the Raiders, but we got the Patriots going to Arizona. Cardinals 6 point favorites, 45.5 point total. And that is the full classic slate. We got Green Bay, Seattle on the night game, and then Chicago, Minnesota, and Atlanta, Vegas on Monday.
I think you missed the Commanders Saint. You didn't mention Commanders.
I did.
Okay,
Yep.
Sorry.
Of those games, any of those stand out to you as games that could get a little wild?
Well, the Bills-Lions is like the most obvious one of the whole year with that total. It opened at 55. Now it's down to 53.5. The only thing is off that 86-point game last week, I feel like it's almost like too obvious.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be expensive, but, they don't have like a ton. Like Josh Allen is the most expensive quarterback, deservedly so. But after that, they have guys that certainly are affordable. Let's go into those, to that pricing now. Quarterback market, we start with Josh Allen, $8,500. Lamar Jackson going to the Giants, $8,300. Jalen Hurts, $8,000. Big drop off to Jaden Daniels playing the Saints, $7,500. Joe Burrow, $7,300. Another big drop, Patrick Mahomes, $6,700. Jared Goff, $6,500. You want to get on, Bills Lions? That's a spot right there. Baker Mayfield, $6,400, goes down by hundreds over there. Bo Nix, CJ Stroud, Tua. Kyler, we can go all the way down. It's not determined who's going to start for the Giants at this moment that we're taping, but Drew Lock is $4,900, as is Mac Jones, and Tommy DeVito is $4,400. There's a chance he could start, but who do you like from this group?
I got 3 I'm looking at. If you're going to spend the money, it's Jaden Daniels off the bye in New Orleans. I think he's going to be healthier off the bye. Also, I guess I watched went to the LSU Florida State game. He played in the Dome, and when his first game for LSU, he ran for like 100-something yards.
Yep.
And I think he could have a big game back in Louisiana, and there'll be a lot of support for him from the LSU fans down there. That's if I'm spending the money. The two that were cheaper I'm looking at, Bo Nix, 6,300 at home against an Indy defense that hadn't been all that good all year. And then also, Cheah, you've mentioned it a ton. The C.J. Stroud home road splits. He's a lot better at home, and Miami's pass defense looked like shit last week against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And so maybe he's worth a look. So those are the three I'm looking at.
Yeah, Moody, who are you looking at for quarterbacks?
So I do agree with Mintz on Jaden Daniels. If you're spending the money, he's number one on my list. And then my cheap guy is a guy that Mitch also just mentioned, but it's Aaron Rodgers. And he's coming off a tremendous performance last week. He gets Jacksonville, who's been atrocious against the pass, even though they did shut down Will Levis last week to a degree. Very, very unfortunate. It cost me, by the way. I got dunked on last week. But I like Aaron Rodgers. I think him and Devontae Adams are balling out right now, at least the last couple weeks. I think that trend will continue against Jacksonville. So I like Daniels and Rodgers as my two guys.
Last week was tough because I also took Levis, and I'm a Levis backer and a Levis believer.
Oh, did you?
And we were watching the games with Gruden, and I was like, dude, Levis has been playing pretty good the whole game. He just gets nothing.
And we all were huge on Ridley too.
He just kept turning to me like, you like Levis here? You like Levis here? Just like, oh my God, he's getting shredded by the Jags.
Yeah, we got smoked as a collective unit right there.
Yeah. I do like Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to be the best quarterback, and I would spend the money on him this weekend. Mincy mentioned him, but I do like Bo Nix. He gets a Colts team that gives the 6th most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks, and he's just been on fire recently, spreading the ball all around to a bunch of different receivers. They also give up 21.5 yards on the ground, and Nix we have seen to be able to take advantage of it, although he hasn't been running as much recently.
I was going to say, it seems like he slowed down on the rushing.
Yeah. One I would point out is the Texans defense has not been very good lately, and they give up the most passing touchdowns in the NFL, 2 per game. Tua is an option here, and he has been playing a lot better, $6,100.
That might be the sneaky. There's always like the sneaky over of the week because everybody's on Bills lines. That 46.5 in Houston, Miami could break out a little bit.
Yeah. All right, let's talk running backs. Top of the market is Saquon Barkley, deservedly so, $8,600. Derrick Henry, $8,300. We see a big drop to Devon Achane, $7,900. Joe Mixon, $7,800. Kamara, $7,700. Jahmyr Gibbs, $7,500. Then we see another big drop down to Chase Brown, $7,200. David Montgomery, $7,000. It goes down by hundreds after that with Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Tony Pollard, James Conner. A bunch. We can get all the way down to, a little above $4,000 with a bunch of these, second string guys. But anybody stand out to you, Mincy, in the running back market?
There's a lot of value guys this week I liked.
Yeah.
Starting with Tony Pollard's like $6,800, I believe, against a Cincy run D that just
67. Yeah.
Yeah, 67. Just watching Cincy Monday night. I mean, they're giving it to Dowdle, and he's not getting touched for 7 or 8 yards.
Yep.
So I think he's a value guy. The other one's 2 in that Cowboys-Panthers game. Chuba Hubbard, 60. I believe he's 65 or 66.
6,500, yeah.
Yeah, I liked him against Dallas. Rico Dowdle coming on big the last few weeks. Carolina's run D sucks.
Yep.
He's 6,100, and I've got a bargain basement one for you.
What's up?
And that's Jaleel McLaughlin at 4,700. Well, I know the Denver thing's been hard to predict,
Yep.
but if you watch that Monday Night Football game, he's popping off the screen. And Javonte Williams is running in mud. It seems like McLaughlin's emerging more and more, so I think he's a good bargain option at 4,700.
I like that as well. The Colts give up the 2nd most rushing yards to opposing running backs, and McLaughlin 14 carries for 84 yards. He can catch the ball too. So Jaleel McLaughlin at 4,700 I think is a very sharp play. Moody, who do you like for the running backs?
Well, my number one guy is Jahmyr Gibbs this week against Buffalo. Buffalo's not very good against the run. And this could be a shootout, right? Like we saw last week that Gibbs had 6 catches. I think if this game trends in the same direction, he's going to be in line for another massive showing. And I think he gets in the end zone this weekend. So give me Jahmyr Gibbs as my number 1. And then my number 2 would be Rico Dowdle against Carolina at 6,100. I think I'm going to probably build my lineup around those two guys. Dowdle over 130 yards last week. He's obviously the focal point of this Cowboys offense right now with Cooper Rush as the quarterback. So those are the 2 guys that I am looking at, Cheah.
I like the pick on Gibbs. especially with the receiving nod, because the Bills just don't defend running backs very well, giving up the third most receiving yards to opposing running backs at 44.5 per game. For running backs, I'm going to spend the money on Derrick Henry. Coming off a bye week, gets a Giants team that gives the fourth most yards to opposing running backs in the NFL at 115. I think this is a game he goes absolutely wild. Moody mentioned Rico Dowdle. I think that is a sharp play. The Panthers give the most rushing yards in the NFL. And when they feed him the ball, he has been good. He has been absolutely like a starter level fantasy player when he gets the ball. A couple I would call out, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, I think, are both good values. Najee Harris, $5,900. Jaylen Warren, $5,400. If George Pickens misses this game, and I know the Eagles have been improved with run defense, but the Steelers they do not have weapons. They do not have weapons on the outside without George Pickens. We look at, their leading Jaylen Warren had the most targets last week with 5 on their team. So they're not really throwing the ball very often to outside receivers. So
Mike Williams is pushing off everybody. I don't know if you watched the game last night.
Yeah,
he was just shoving DBs everywhere.
4 targets, 3 catches, 36 yards from Mike Williams. So not a ton of options. So I think Pittsburgh is going to try to run the football and do it often, and those are 2 guys to do it, $5,900 and $5,400. And then Mintz, you mentioned Jaleel McLaughlin. Those are the guys that I would target. One other note, I mentioned this last week, if Bucky Irving is inactive, I think Sean Tucker is a guy absolutely to play. $4,300, broke off a big run last week. He's going to get fed more and more. I know Rashad White had a very good game, but at value, $4,300 for Sean Tucker. If Bucky Irving is not playing, is a great play. All right, let's go to receivers. Jamar Chase, top of the market, $8,400. Nico Collins at $8,100. And A.J. Brown, $8,000. The very frustrated A.J. Brown. Then we got a big drop to Amon-Ra St. Brown, $7,600. Tyreek Hill, $7,400. Goes down by hundreds after that with CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, and Courtland Sutton. We can get all the way down to like $3,000 here. Moody, we'll start with you. Who stands out to you in the receiver market?
Number 1 on my board this week is Devontae Adams at $6,900 against Jacksonville. I just mentioned that I think Rodgers is going to have a good game. Devontae Adams, coming off a monster performance, had a touchdown last week, over 11. I think he had 11, 12 targets. He had 109 yards in total. And it's just the rapport that him and Rodgers have. The Jets have absolutely nothing to play for at this point except for padding their stats and, just having fun out there. And I think Rodgers and Adams are going to have these big games down the stretch here because there's nothing to play for. I think they're just going to sling it around out there. I think Devontae Adams is in line for a big week. I also like Amari Cooper. 14 targets last week. If this Detroit-Buffalo game trends in the same direction, kind of like I talked about with Gibbs, I think you could see a similar performance from Amari Cooper once again. And then I also like Terry McLaurin. So I'm going to probably pick 2 of those 3 to be my guys.
Do you value our viewers, Moody? Because in back-to-back weeks, you're giving them Titan stacks and Jet stacks. That is just brutal for the eyes.
No, you're not wrong here, Cheah. And it's crazy. It didn't work out for me last week. It had worked the last 2 weeks, my stacks, but it did not work at all last week. So I'm praying that I've
just
got
horrible watches. Horrible watches.
I know, bro. I know, and I can't believe I'm saying it because, obviously the Jets have nothing to play for, but it just feels like they're just going to go out there and just throw it around for fun and just let Rodgers be that guy. That's what I think is going to happen. At least that's what I'm hoping.
It looked like I watched that whole Jets-Miami game last week because I had Miami -6, and I got away with just murder pushing that game. Luckiest thing that's probably ever happened. And Rodgers, the passing game looked the best. That was different than it's looked the whole year.
Yeah. All right, Mincy, receivers, who stands out to you?
There's a lot of good value here. I'm going Moody straight. I'm going with the Bo Nix, Courtland Sutton stack. Okay. He's just been so consistent. And at $6,600, I don't think you're overpaying. The whole key is can he get in the end zone, but he's had over 5 catches and over 70 yards like 8 or 9 straight weeks. Mm-hmm. So I like that. Then a bunch of value guys in the mid-5Ks. Starting with Jalen Waddle at $5,700. He's getting more targets. He's been coming on the last couple of weeks finally. That game also, like you mentioned, Houston's pasty, not the best indoor game. I think it could break out. I like Moody's Amari Cooper suggestion. I think the Cooper thing, he's getting more and more targets as he develops a rapport with Josh Allen. I think he's kind of coming on strong at 5,300. And then, if Jamison Williams is playing, 5,600 looks like a good value in a game that could be a shootout. So I think there's value in all those guys.
Jamison Williams at home, another guy. Look at his home and road splits. He's averaging over 40 more yards combined rushing and receiving at home. And if you're doing props, take a look at his rushing and receiving. He's had a run in 7 of 11 games that he's played this season. Some of those can be big runs. All right, receivers. I like Terry McLaurin. I like the Jaden Daniels Terry McLaurin stack. If he's going to have a big game, it's going to be through Terry McLaurin, $7,200 in that Buffalo Detroit game. Jamison Williams, I think, is a sharp play at $5,600. Khalil Shakir, I like from Buffalo just because he already has that rapport with Josh Allen. We saw last week he can take kind of intermediate balls to the house.
He's also in PPR. He gets a lot of targets.
Yep, yeah, and the Lions give up the second most yards to opposing wide receivers at 186 a game, so I think there's going to be a lot to go around there. Adam Thielen is one. Cowboys give the 10th most yards to opposing wide receivers, and he has shown a rapport with Bryce Young. He is a professional. He can get open, so I like those guys.
What's Thielen's price?
Thielen is $5,400,
okay.
So I like him. We'll see what shakes out with the rest of, we're taping this on Wednesday, some injuries and stuff like that, like Colts injuries. Is Josh Downs going to play? Is Ladd McConkey going to play? A couple of those. But let's get into tight ends. Top of the market, Trey McBride, $6,000. Travis Kelce, $5,700. Jonnu Smith suddenly on fire despite having 0 catches in the first 4 quarters last week.
So crazy.
$5,400. David Njoku, $52,000. Dalton Kincaid, $4,900. Big drop, then it goes to Evan Engram, $46,000, and it goes down from by 100. So that you can get all the way down to $2,500 if you want to get crazy. But anybody stand out to you here, Mincy?
There's a bunch of good options. I'm debating spending the money on McBride, even if it's $6K, just because his floor is so high. He had a horrible first half and still ended with 7 for 70. The only thing with him, he's just allergic to the end zone. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. But also, the Jonnu Smith thing was wild last week. Is literally no targets, nothing, and then an OT just goes off, catches the game-winning touchdown.
Yep.
I don't mind him at $5,400. Laporta at $4,400 is not bad either. It's kind of one of those things where he was overrated going in the year, and now he's kind of underrated.
Yep.
Seems like he's has a chance to get in the end zone, but there's a bunch of pretty good tight end options. Oh, and if you want to go cheap, Zach Ertz, $4K against the Saints. I think is a good one.
He's been good this year. He has absolutely been good.
They don't have a second wide receiver, so he's kind of that second target.
Yeah. Moody, who stands out to you amongst the tight ends?
I think David Njoku is the number one play this week against Kansas City. The one thing about Kansas City, they're so good against the run. They do a great job on the outside, but they do give up yards to tight ends. And Njoku's coming off a 14-target week last week. Jameis is right now looking at Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. Those are the guys that are really seeing the football. I think Njoku could have another good game against Kansas City, a game that you expect Cleveland to be trailing in. And then if you're looking for cheap, I gave him out last week. I'll give him out once again. It is Taylor Trimble. He had a touchdown last week, only had 2 targets, but he is a guy that Bryce Young looks for in the red zone. So Taylor Trimble at $3K, but my number one guy is David Njoku.
I would keep an eye on if Jatavion Sanders is playing this week, just because he could eat into.
He was in there last week as well, but it didn't really impact Trimble too much.
Okay, Trimble $3K, Jatavion Sanders $3,100. All right, tight ends. I totally agree on Njoku. The Chiefs get the most passing yards to opposing tight ends. There's one guy to keep an eye on here, and he is $2,600. Stone Smart from the Los Angeles Chargers. They're playing the Bucs this week. Keep an eye on injury reports. Will Dissly right now is doubtful. Will Dissly has been coming on.
Oh, he's been great
this season for sure. In his absence last week, Stone Smart, 3 targets, 3 catches, 54 yards. I think if you can get that type of production, or even better with Will Dissly not playing at all and him getting full starter reps in practice and everything like that, the Bucs give up the second most yards to opposing tight ends. They cannot cover tight ends. Levante David is a very good linebacker. He has seen a little bit of regression this year. And then their second linebacker, Vi Jones was playing some. Like, they're getting guys off the street. They just signed Deion Jones. They cannot guard tight ends. Antoine Winfield Jr. also hurt, who sometimes participates in some of that. So there is an alley there for Stone Smart to have a very good game. And at cost, At $2,600, I think he is a very good play this week. But again, pay attention to injury reports. Defenses. Let's go over that. Baltimore, top of the market, 14-point favorites against the Giants. $3,900. We got Kansas City going against Jameis Winston, who has been very, very valuable to opposing defenses.
It's been the full experience.
Yeah, $3,700. Cincinnati, $3,500. It goes down by hundreds after that with Washington, $34, Houston, $33, Denver, $32. All the way down to New York Giants at $2,100. Mincy, where are you leaning with the defense?
Kind of leaning Denver at $3,200 against Anthony Richardson. I just think there's a chance he could turn it over and throw some picks. Denver has an opportunistic defense. As usual, trying to save a little money at defense. But Denver, I tried to scroll through all the bottom options, and Denver at $3,200 was the first one I could stomach.
Okay. All right, Moody, who you got for defense?
Well, you hate to hear this one, Cheah, but it's the Chargers for me at $2,900. Baker Mayfield and the Bucs are scoring points, but they are also turning the football over. I mean, Baker Mayfield right now, he is in complete gunslinger mode. And sometimes that means he's going to throw some interceptions. I think he is the most likely, along with Jameis and Winston, to throw an interception. I like the Chargers at $2,900. I think they'll have a chance to score a touchdown on a pick six off of Baker Mayfield.
I understand the logic there. I think this is going to be a very low scoring game. The Chargers don't have, like, if Vlad McConkey doesn't play again and Will Dissly doesn't play again, J.K. Dobbins is already out. Like, they do not have playmakers on the outside. I think, maybe Quentin Johnson gets a long ball or something like that in this game. But overall, they do not have a lot of guys that can put points on the board. On the other side, if Bucky Irving misses this game, that could be problems because Rachaad White is a good player. He doesn't have the same burst that and he has broken off long runs. He had, the big run in overtime a couple weeks ago, but he doesn't have the same consistent burst that Bucky Irving does. I think Sean Tucker takes the bigger share of that backfield this week. But outside of that, Mike Evans, very, very good player. Cade Otton, all right. And then, what are we doing? Jalen McMillan, Sterling Shepard, like, not a ton of guys that are going to scare you on the outside of Evans. So I think this could be a very low scoring game. I would consider the Bucs defense at $2,600. I think that the Chargers is a sharp play also at $2,900. I would spend the money this week if I could on a defense. Baltimore going against Drew Lock, potentially $3,900. They should be trailing most of that game. If I could spend the money, I would go top of the market with Baltimore there. Kansas City also going against Cleveland. We talked Jameis Winston, $3,700. So this is not the week I would skimp on a defense if I could avoid it. So I'm going to stay away from all the bottom of the markets, which I have kind of been interested in before. But I would spend the money on defense this week. All right, plant your flag guy of the week. A guy you're going to put in your fantasy lineup no matter what. Way too good of a deal to not. Mincy, who do you got?
So I actually tried to, in the name of the Plant Your Flag segment, I usually always tip my hand, and I tried to pull the Cheah and save it. I went cheap on purpose, a receiver with the 5K guys and Bo Nix and running back, just so I could get Jahmyr Gibbs in my flex at 7,500.
Okay.
Just like I said, he's catching the ball. I think this game's going to be wild, and I know it's a lot, but I think at 7,500 still a good value. And you mentioned Buffalo struggling against running backs against the pass too.
Yeah. All right, Moody, who do you got?
Well, that was going to be my Plant Your Flag play of the week. I completely agree on Jahmyr Gibbs here. I just think he's in line for a monster game against Buffalo. They struggle against backs just like him. We've seen the performances that A-Chain has had in the past against them. They remind me of one another just a bit. So I like Gibbs. And then, so I'll give a second one out here. And I'm going with Aaron Rodgers at 5,400 against Jacksonville. How about it? I went Will Levis last week. How about Aaron Rodgers this week? I just think that they're trending in the right direction. I just think they're going to go out there and throw it around a ton. I think Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson looks great too. Wilson had double-digit targets as well. So I think those two guys are going to have big performances, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to torch the Jacksonville defense. But I thought that last week about Will Levis. I do have more confidence in Aaron Rodgers and his receivers than I do in Will Levis, though. I will say that.
Yeah. All right. This I usually like to give out bargain guys in this, and I'm going to stick with that. And I know he didn't look particularly great last week, but this is more of a familiarity play. So I'm going to give out 2 guys. One of them I'm going to make your plant your flag guy. So I mentioned that George, and this is all dependent on injury because George Pickens is doubtful.
I don't think he's going to go, though. Hamstring thing. They got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, he got added to the injury report, I believe, on Friday. So that's always a very tough thing to play that weekend. And, that kind of carries over to the next weekend. He's going to be not even rested for 10 days by the time their next game happens. So going against the Eagles, 2 guys I'm going to look at. I think you should take a strong look at Scotty Miller, $3,000 at wide receiver. He is a field stretcher. He is very, very fast. 4 targets last week, 3 catches, 38 yards. If they get a very long touchdown, it is likely going to be because of him. Another guy, Mike Williams, $3,800. A lot of familiarity with the Chiefs. He's had some very, very big. Sorry, he's not playing the Chiefs. He's playing the Eagles. But Mike Williams, $3,800, very physical player. Obviously, the Eagles secondary can be very physical, $3,800. Of those 2, I am going to go with Scotty Miller, $3,000. He's my plant your flag guy of the week. I think if you can just add him into your lineup at $3K and get some production, again, last week, 4 targets, 3 catches, 38 yards. If you can get a little bit more than that, you're looking at a great deal. And then you can spend on the Derrick Henrys of the world, the Jaden Daniels of the world, the David Njokus of the world. You can get that Baltimore defense because you're saving a ton of money at receiver for not terrible production, definitely worthwhile production for the value. So that is where I'm going to save money. I'm going with Scotty Miller this week of the Pittsburgh Steelers as your playing player guy of the week.
I want to shout out to excited this weekend. I'm going to the DraftKings Fantasy DFS World Championship in Nashville. Looking forward to meeting everybody there. DraftKings throwing a hell of an event, man. Getting to go to the Yeehaw Brewery, see O's the Mentalist.
Yes. The greatest performer on earth.
I can't wait. You got me pumped about it because I've heard of him, but I've never seen him. There's like a dinner reception Saturday night, and then the World Championships is going to be from noon to 3:30 in the early games on Sunday. So just excited about that trip with DraftKings in Nashville, and we're proud DK partners.
Tell O's I say hello. I've been DMing with him. We are trying to get him back on the yak. He is worth every penny for whatever you pay to see him. He is the absolute best.
I can't wait to see. Dude, you got me so pumped about it now.
Yeah, I love Magic. He's the GOAT. All right. For the King of the South, Mincy. For Moody, I am Stephen Cheah. Good luck if you're in the fantasy playoffs this weekend. Remember to sign up for the Pardon My Take award-winning listener.
Moody, first place right now for the year.
Yes, Moody's been crushing in the PMT DFS league. So make sure
except for last week. Last week I got dunked on.
Yeah, we're not going to mention the Will Levis stack, which has doomed us all. But appreciate you guys for watching, and hopefully see you in the winner's circle this weekend.